So the reason I have this class, primarily because most people go to the doctor because they have some sort of an ache, a complaint, a pain of some kind, right? Some sort of a symptom. If you came here and your symptoms went away, great, okay? But if I can teach you more about your body, how your body works, so that maybe now you can eliminate that from potentially happening in the future, to me, there's way more value in that, right? It's like you can give a person a fish or teach them how to fish, right? We want to teach you how your body works and how you can maintain it. A class like this, 30 plus years ago, completely changed my whole life. And so I feel like if I don't take this opportunity, there's things that I know you're never going to hear unless you hear it tonight. Some of it will maybe surprise you, some shock you, some might even piss you off, right? But if I don't tell you, then it could potentially, it could hurt you. Okay, we'll just say that. So I was thinking about something today, and a weird situation that happened to me I want to share with you. I used to have a franchise of 64 offices. I had them from Hawaii all through the United States and even into Europe. And I used to fly all the time. I was gone pretty much at least every other weekend somewhere, and visiting with the offices, speaking at conferences, conventions, and stuff like that. And so one time, I remember I was finishing up in the office, and it was like one of those days where you just slammed going nonstop, and I had like a 7:30 flight, and I get out of here at like 6:15, and I'm like flying over to the airport, park real quick, running into the airport, with carry-on, trying, making sure I get on my flight. And I got there just enough time. I'm walking through, and I'm like, I haven't eaten anything, and I got like a 4-hour flight to California. I'm like, I'm gonna have to. And so the only thing I saw on the way to the thing was a place that sold cookies. On the way to my where do you load, right? Whatever the door is, right? And my gate. And so I just real quickly stopped in, and I just grabbed just give me a bag of assorted different cookies. So I go in, and finally I get in my seat. I sat down. I set the cookies like between my chair and the chair next to me, and I'm thinking about it. Well, then as I'm sitting there waiting, I see this little lady come walking down the aisle, and she's an older lady. And matter of fact, she reminded me of my grandmother's. I'm from Kentucky, and I was just like, oh, this sweet little lady, she's just walking through smiling at everybody, and I'm thinking, this little lady that kind of reminded me of my grandma. So she walks up and she just looks at me. She's like, honey, I'm right over here in the middle seat, right? I'm always on the aisle. I can't, claustrophobic anywhere else. So I get up, and she goes in and sits down. So we take off on the plane, and finally we get up in the air. And after we're up in the air for a few minutes, I'm like, you know what? I think I'll go ahead and grab one of my cookies. So I reached down between the chairs and pulled a cookie out, and I started to eat it. And then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed her kind of look at me and look down and see my cookies. And she reached in and pulled a cookie out of my bag. And I was like, I kind of like looked at her, and she's kind of looking at me, and she's like biting on eating the cookie. And I'm like, what in the heck? This lady's crazy, right? So a little further on down the road, I'd like, time for another cookie, right? So I reach in. No sooner than I got my hand out of the bag, she had her hand right in the bag and grabbed my last cookie. And I look at her, and she looks at me, and she's just eating my cookie. And I'm like, this old bag, here I was comparing her to my grandmother, thinking, this mean old lady, who's she, So it was one of those deals, it doesn't happen very often, where I haven't done that in a long time. This was 20 years ago. You land somewhere, and you either get off the plane and change planes. Ours actually landed somewhere. I think it was Chicago or something like that. But anyway, they had people get on, people get off, and I stayed on because my same plane continued on to California. Well, that lady got up, she got off the flight. And as I get up and move out, and she gets up, and I look at her, and she looks at me, and she walks on. I was like, oh, here I was thinking, this lady might like my grandmother. She's nothing like my grandmother. So I get back on the flight. We head on to California. Once we land, I'm getting all my stuff together, and I reach down underneath the seat to get my backpack out, which I had up in front of me, and I looked down, something caught my eye in the corner of my eye. It's a bag of cookies underneath the chair. Still had the cookies in it. So what I had determined was I had been eating her cookies. She had the same idea, I guess. And, when she sat down, we probably sat down together, and they just slipped through the seats, and she set hers between us. And so every time I was reaching in and taking one of her cookies. So the point of my story is sometimes when you just know exactly, what's going on, sometimes you'll learn that maybe you didn't really have all the facts, right? So what you're going to hear tonight, a lot of it is probably going to be counterintuitive, what you've probably heard your whole life. But I just want you to open your eyes and think about it and let me know if it makes sense or not. If it doesn't, that's great. But I've got everything we're going to talk about. I've done the research. I've been doing this for 31 years. If you look, you can find plenty of it. And I can direct you if you're interested in any particular part of what we're going to talk about. So the first thing I want to bring up, I got to have room I can't talk without moving my hands. My wife's Italian and it kind of rubs off on me, I guess, but I got to have plenty of room so I don't beat up the board. So every year the CDC, you know what? I'm right-handed though. We're going to switch this. Yeah, something didn't feel right. Usually we do it on that end of the office, but because of the lighting, we switched it up a little bit. So, all right, this feels much better. So every year the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, ranks the causes of death in the United States, right? The overall cause of death. Based off the CDC, anybody know what the number one cause of death in the U.S. is?
I do.
Do you?
Is it medication errors or like hospital errors?
Don't be getting ahead of me. This is the CDC. What the CDC would say.
Oh, for diseases? Heart disease?
There you go. Very good, Amy. Yep. Heart disease is number one. Number two?
Cancer.
Sorry?
Cancer.
Close. Not yet. Kind of related to this indirectly. I'll give you a hint.
Strokes?
Yep. Stroke. Then you said cancer. That's where all the money goes. I'm going to help you with the last two because nobody really dies from diabetes, but complications that would result, right? So they list diabetes as the fourth. And then 5, they actually lump all accidents into the same category. Could have been car accident, could have fallen off your house, could have been hurt on the job. They pile them all up in the same category. So those are based off the CDC. Now there's another condition that Amy already tried to point out and get ahead of me called iatrogenic disease, or in this case, iatrogenic death. Anybody ever heard the term iatrogenic? Okay. Iatrogenic means doctor-induced. Yeah. It does not mean you were having a heart attack and you went in and operated, didn't make it. It means that you'd be alive today had you not done whatever it was your doctor told you to do, okay? So there was a report that came out called Death by Medicine. It was actually 3 medical doctors and 3 PhDs. They just went out and added it all up, okay? They didn't go spend 20 years in a hospital and count what happened, but they just went up and tabulated all the research that's already there. It was on adverse drug reactions, hospital-induced infections, malpractice, stuff like that. If you Google it, it's the first thing that'll come up. And it's about a 12-page PDF, but it's research. And it's not something that would be published in, the Charlotte Observer, but it was published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. And what they found in that research was every year, 784,000 people die per year in the U.S. Now, 784,000 people, that's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, right? This would be the equivalent to 6 jumbo jets, 747, crashing in the United States every single day.
Every day?
Every single day. So if 6 jumbo jet planes crash, you think that'd make the news?
Yeah.
Right? I wonder why we've never heard this.
Are those doctor-induced deaths because patients asked for it or because the doctors were testing for something?
Well, nowadays, who knows? Regardless, it's the doctor's ethical responsibility to do what they know is best for the patient. If you come to me and say, hey, I need heroin, if I give it to you and you die, it's pretty much my fault.
Right.
So but it's not, I mean, if that's a percentage, I think it's probably small. Most of the time, it happened to me, literally, in my own family. My father-in-law had hemochromatosis, which is a genetic liver condition. He had like a pot belly because his liver was 2.5 times normal size just to process the normal stuff that we do. But he was perfectly healthy, 61 years old, nothing else wrong with him. He was in the hospital for an unrelated lawnmower accident, cut off half his foot. But while he was there, they had him on morphine through an IV. Well, when it goes in IV, it's in the bloodstream, right? It doesn't have to be processed by the liver, so he was fine. Well, his liver doctor, on the way out, wrote him an oral prescription, which has to be processed by the digestive system. And what happened was the very first dose, his liver went into, basically his kidneys cramped up. His liver got so toxic, the kidneys closed, called hepatorenal failure. And he just basically, his kidneys never opened up again. And he died a week later. And it was just one dose that started it. And then because that day he got all swollen, went to the hospital. Basically his doctor diagnosed it, realized, he's like, oh, you got hepatorenal failure. Well, they did not. They put on a death certificate, he just died of hepatorenal failure, not iatrogenic causes. So that's another story we'll get to. So 6 planes a day falling out of the sky in the United States, right? So that's kind of the reason, and we started with this, the reason you haven't heard about this is because the same people that run the big pharma, they control all the media. So 80% of all advertising paid for in the United States is paid for by big pharma. So they're not going to let them run an article like this in the paper because they pull their advertising. If you own 80% of anybody's profit margin, not even profit margin, anybody's overhead, you basically can dictate what they're going to do, right? As a matter of fact, it's happened to me twice. Twice I was on national news. Came and did the whole story. Here, recorded everything. Once on my book and once on the research we did on multiple sclerosis. Well, national news, I already did the whole story. And last second, they pulled it out both times. And finally, one of them, the Fox guy I worked with finally was like, I was like, dude, you got to give me some answers. He was pissed. He flew all the way out here, spent 2 days here doing this story, interviewing people. And afterwards, he finally was like, Doc, he goes, I got to tell you, he goes, one of our big execs called me up and he said, I'm yanking your story. And he said, why would you yank this story? This is a great story. And he said, have you ever seen who pays our bills? Have you seen who runs our advertising? And he said, yeah. He said, if I ever ran a story like that, they're going to yank their advertising and you and I both be out of a job. So it sucks, but that's the truth. So, what they allow you to see is what they want you to see. Bottom line. That's right. Right? Now, if you were to take iatrogenic disease and you were to rank it based off the CDC causes of death, where would it be, Amy? Exactly. Now, matter of fact, this number is greater than those two combined. Now, if you were to print out that Death by Medicine book, or report, if you were to go to page 3, the authors, as I said, 3 MDs, 3 PhDs, they believe this number is at the very least 5 times that amount. But they think it could be as much as 20 times that amount. No, okay, so let's just go on the low end. Let's say 5 times that amount. That would be 30 planes a day falling out of the sky. Now, why do you think they say that? Any guesses?
Aren't reported.
Because what happened with my father-in-law, right? That didn't go on this report. He died of hepatorenal failure, and they'll call it idiopathic, right? Everything's idiopathic, right? Oh, he just had idiopathic. Because I asked the guy, I'm like, well, why do you think he had hepatorenal failure? He's like, oh, sometimes these things just happen. Yeah, that's BS, right? Kidneys don't just shut down and livers freeze up for no reason, right? And I told him, I said, he has hemochromatosis. He said, yeah, I've been his liver doctor for 10 years. And I said, and you gave him oral morphine. And he said, yeah. And I said, and oral morphine is very toxic to the liver. Well, some say it is. And I said, the PDR, Physician Death Reference, which is the Bible, right? Says, first thing it says in big red letters, very toxic to the liver. Don't give to someone with a liver condition. So he wasn't going to admit that because that would be admitting malpractice. And, of course he's not. But that's what happened. One dose actually did that. So I tell you this primarily because we live in the information age. And just because someone in a long white coat tells you, hey, take this pill, have this surgery, look into it, right? I don't think the guy intentionally killed my father-in-law. But he did. And he went to work the next day. They bury their problems and move on, right? And, my kids knew their father-in-law till they were 2 and 3 years old. And that was it. Right? My mother-in-law, Italian immigrant, depended on him 100%. And at 61, that's young. At 61, he's gone for no reason, just because somebody made a mistake. So it's not fair. So be careful, right? And again, this is one of these things that I feel like if you don't hear it here, you're probably not going to hear it. Now, I will tell you though, we just launched this weekend my podcast, and we did a whole story. One of the podcasts is on this. So we need to make sure we get your emails and stuff so you can get on the list. But you can always go to YouTube and find it on there, and subscribe. But I just did, actually I pulled up the actual report itself and the CDC website, so you can actually see the real numbers side by side. It's actually, I've never done that before until I did the podcast, which is actually kind of eye-opening for me, even though I've said the same thing for 30 years. Okay, now, I want to talk to you a little bit about healthcare. That blue seems to write pretty good. We're going to stick with that. Okay, so healthcare. All right, so what is healthcare? Well, how many people go to the doctor when you feel good? Right? What are they going to do? Weigh you, measure you, right? I mean, they don't really. So the system we have today, really, if I went to Dr. Obing down here as a GP, he's a good dude. I really like him. I went down there and said, "Hey, Dr. Obing, I need to see you." First thing he's going to ask me is, "What's wrong?" Right? So the system we have today is based off of really about how you feel. It's about symptoms. If there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing to do for you, right? So it's not really a health care system. It's more of a disease care. We call it more of it's a crisis care. You go there when there's a problem. So they're not caring for health. They're basically waiting till there's a problem and then they're going to address it, right? So it's not really a healthcare system. So it's two different things here, contrast. So let's talk about this system. Like we said, it's based off of how you feel, right? It's based off of symptoms. So let's say you put your hand on a hot stove. You're going to start to have symptoms, right? Pretty quickly, right? Now, is it a good symptom or a bad symptom? Well, it hurts, right? Well, why is it there? It's there telling you, hey, dummy, move your hand, right? It's literally there to protect you. Well, believe it or not, all symptoms are there to protect you. They're there to tell you, hey, it's your alarm system going off telling you something's wrong, okay? So let's say, what was your name again? Tyler, that's right. We met. My short-term memory is really short. Tyler, I'm going to take you because you look like you're going to answer this properly. I'm going to take you car shopping. I'm buying any car. Any car. Don't give me no Prius, you hear me?
I was going to say a Toyota Tundra.
Larry, I'm going to take you car shopping. You know you could have bought a Lamborghini, sold it, and bought 10 Tundras. All right. I'm going to go with Larry's Lamborghini. Doesn't matter. But the point of the story is, let's say I bought you a stupid Tundra. Okay, you're driving down the road, and the engine light comes on. Yeah, there's a problem, right? Not really sure exactly what the problem is. Well, you're not going to take your Tundra. Well, maybe you will, down to the 5-and-dime mechanic. But if it was a Lamborghini, you wouldn't. You're going to take it to the Lamborghini guy, right? Because this is a very expensive car. Anyway, bottom line is there's something wrong with your car. So you're going to take it to the mechanic, right? Head guy comes out, knows more about Tundras than anyone, right? Like the Tundra doctor. He's going to come out and he's going to be like, you got an engine light going on here. I got just the thing. I'll be right back, right? He's going to run off. He's going to come back. Little spray paint. Engine light's gone. So it must be okay, right? I mean, if there's no engine light, then everything must be all right, right? So you're going to get in your Tundra, right? And you're going to drive down the road. Eventually, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to have a bigger problem than an engine light, right? Something bigger, right? Well, you realize when you take a Tylenol, all you're doing is just spraying over the, right? So you're not fixing anything, right? You don't think headaches come from a Tylenol deficiency, right? No. So taking a Tylenol is never going to fix anything. It just masks it, but the problem's still there. So like migraines are a good example. Anybody know someone with migraines, right? So if you think about the mechanism for a migraine is the brain says I need more blood. So push blood against gravity, get it to the brain. Well, another thing has to happen. In order for that blood to get there, the blood vessels have to dilate. They have to open up to allow for the extra blood flow. The problem with migraines is a lot of times they don't dilate enough, so pushing a lot of blood through a small opening, the blood vessels get irritated. They get inflamed. That creates the pain. Like a blood flow to the brain, creates the auras, etc., right? Very simple for us. It's the nerves that control the blood vessels. We correct that so the nerves get to the blood vessel, they dilate, full blood flow, everything goes away, right? But if you don't do that, then years of having migraines, years of slowly starving the brain. Now research has come out in Journal of American Medical Association, 80% of long-term migraine sufferers, 8 out of 10, long-term is 10 years or more, have a stroke. So think about it. Think about it. If you're slowly starving the brain for years, then eventually the part of the brain dies. That's basically what's going on. So taking your migraine, Excedrin migraine, your Imitrex, whatever, masking the pain doesn't fix anything. So that's what drugs do. They cover up the pain or the symptoms while your body gets sicker till eventually bigger problems happen. Make sense? Yeah. So treating symptoms is like waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, your fire alarm's going off, right? You get up, you go unplug the battery, go back to bed. That's what you're doing, basically. Right. You're basically just, yeah. So, for example, remember these conditions over here, like heart disease. Okay. What does heart disease feel like?
High blood pressure.
Like what?
Feel like high blood pressure?
Yeah, not really.
Breath?
Say again?
Shortness of breath? Chest pain?
Well, okay. But by then, what's happening?
You're having it.
Yeah. 50% of the time, the very first symptom you have of heart disease is death. You have a heart attack and die. You had no idea. You thought everything was fine. You're playing golf, walk off the 18th hole, boom, you're gone, right? 50% of the time. So you probably don't want to wait for the symptoms, right? Stroke. Well, the symptoms of stroke. It's a freaking stroke. By the time you have the symptoms, you already had the stroke, right? Cancer. If you wait till you have symptoms of cancer, it's probably pretty far along. It often takes about 10 years before you can even see it on x-ray, right? So the idea is you don't want to wait for something to happen before it happens. You want to be ahead of it and get ahead of it and make sure it doesn't happen, right? Okay, makes more sense. Now, the other problem with this system is it's very expensive. Matter of fact, in the United States, we spend more than twice as much per person out of pocket than any other country in the world. More than twice as much. Well, you're probably thinking, but of course, we're the best, right? You got the Mayo, Johns Hopkins, Harvard. You get what you pay for. Well, the WHO, World Health Organization, ranks the overall health of the top 80 countries in the world. And currently, United States stands very strong at 43rd. Right? Now, they also have another category they just added the last couple of years for value. Surprising, though, that the WHO would do this, since they America pretty much has paid their salaries for many, many years. It's another story. But now, for value of the top 80 countries in the world, the United States ranks 79th.
Value for your
So we beat somebody.
Does that mean value for dollar or like value of care?
Value and bang for your buck, how much we spend and what we get for what we spend. So I don't even know the other country. I couldn't pronounce it, but we're 79th out of 80 as far as return on investment, right? So we don't have bottom line is our system is way overpriced and we don't get much out of it, right? Sorry?
Who's number one?
It's one of the Asian countries, Japan, Thailand, Singapore, it's an Asian country. Some of the Scandinavian, Norway, Sweden, those are all pretty good. Yeah. One of the factors, now you remember, so you may not remember, you may not know, United States makes up about 4% of the world population. I think it's like 4.2%. Actually, it's funny because RFK Jr. basically came up with this exact statistic the other day, and I've been saying it for 30 years. He did read my book, though. That may be where he got it. Yeah, one of my good friends he has an upper cervical doctor in New York. He's one of my good friends. Yeah, and I signed a book to him, and he gave him my book. So maybe one day he'll show it at Congress. You all need to be reading this book, right? Let's hope. So we make about 4.2% of the world population, but yet of all the drugs manufactured, of all the drugs produced in the United States, just America alone consumes 70%.
Wow.
We consume 80% of all pain pills.
All pain pills, period?
All pain pills made in the world. We consume 80% of them. I don't know. I'm thinking that these are probably the pharmaceutical. But so if drugs work, we should be number one, right? We take all the drugs, we should be the healthiest country in the world, right? But we're 79th out of 80, so I think that we could probably add that up, right? So again, now, well, one last statement on this crisis care. If you leave here tonight, and let's say you roll your car down 45, right? You lose a leg, you cut a major artery, you have an eyeball hanging out, don't call us. That's when I would not want to be anywhere else in the world. In a real crisis situation, I believe we have the best crisis care system on the planet, right? But crisis care is actually 1% of all healthcare. So it's not, the system is flawed. The problem is they try to improve health on a crisis model, and it doesn't work that way. So what would happen if you had someone who's perfectly healthy and you just started shoving them drugs? They're going to get sick. So why do we think you have someone sick, you shovel them drugs, they're going to make them healthy? It doesn't make sense at all, does it? But that's all we've known, you know. Some of you guys that are my age, you know, how do you spell relief? Since you were a little kid, right? Yeah. We all heard that our whole life, right? I mean, that's all we've ever been taught. I mean, if all you did was watch TV, read newspapers, look at billboards, listen to radio, 80% of the market is telling you constantly, take our drugs, you know. You know, even like, you know, hey, if you're not really happy, you know, look at this girl running down the flowers and playing in the tulips and how happy she is.
Years ago, when we were kids, they didn't have that stuff on TV.
Oh, I know. That's true. Well, they did have like stuff like ROLAIDS, but then it was not prescription, right? They had stuff that wasn't prescription. As a matter of fact, you know, there's only 2 countries in the whole world that it's legal to advertise pharmaceuticals, America and New Zealand. Those are the only 2 countries in the world they can advertise pharmaceuticals. And actually, RFK is trying to stop that too. He's put legislation out. So, okay. So enough on this. Let's talk about the good stuff, not the crisis care. We're done with that. Everybody understands that model, right? We're going to talk now about the good stuff. That's the health care. All right, so in order to understand what health care is, how to care for it, we have to first define what is health. If it's not about how you feel, what is it to be healthy? Right? So kind of another example, my youngest, my mother-in-law, bought my 2 daughters. This was years ago. She was probably 3 years old, my youngest. You know the candy hearts for Valentine's? This one was like this, right? I mean, it was huge. And for each daughter. And you know what a 3-year-old's like. She opens the box and she's like, oh my God, right? And they're all different shapes and colors and sizes. And she's like, I've got to try them all, right? Well, you know, she ate 2 or 3 of them. And I'm like, okay, you can have some more later. Let's put the box away, you know, and you can have some more later. Well, next thing I know, I'm in the house, and all of a sudden, mother-in-law comes over. She just lives right down the street. And she comes running in the house. She said, oh, my God, Sophia's sick. She's sick. She's throwing up in the yard. And I'm like, what? And I walk out there, and I look, and she's throwing up milk chocolate. So I'm like, Sophia, where's your little candy box? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, where's your candy box, you know? And then she's outside, so I know it's outside somewhere. And she kind of looks over and she goes, I don't know. And so I walk around the side of the house. It was over there. There was about 30 half pieces laying in the box. So, of course, you know, she had to try all of them, you know, until she could, because it, you know, it was killing her. So she snuck outside around the side of the house with the box, and she's there eating that's the sneaky one. The youngest ones you always got to watch out for. And so so her mom's like, she's sick. We got to take her to the doctor. We got to give her some drugs. And I'm like, no, she's not sick. She's healthy, right? She's toxified her body, and her body's like, no. We ain't going to put up with this. And they basically got rid of her. It was basically doing what her body's supposed to do. That's what healthy kids do. When you have something in your system that shouldn't be there, it removes it for you, right? So again, that's being healthy, not sick. Okay, so we're going to determine what health is so that we can figure out how to care for it, right? Obviously, you don't need drugs if you're healthy, you know, and they're not going to make you healthy. And if you're sick, they're not going to make you healthy either. So, all right, so this is where it gets really cool. All right, there's 2 intelligences that you have, right? One is educated, right? The one you're using right now. You're listening to me. You're thinking about what I'm saying. I'm thinking about it now. Get the storm coming. So, educated is when you came here, you had none, basically, you know, and when you leave, I don't know if it goes with you or not, but we accumulate educated intelligence while we're here, right? Educated. And educated is nothing compared to the one I'm going to explain to you. And this is called innate. Innate intelligence is the intelligence that you were born with. thus inborn intelligence. So innate intelligence is what controls and regulates every system in your body. It controls and it basically does millions, if not billions, of things simultaneously. For example, let's say you ate one of Monica's cookies, right? You take a bite, you chew it, you swallow it, then what do?
You digest it,
Yeah, how you do that?
stomach acid,
Okay,
and then it continues to go down into your intestines.
okay.
Pulls out from your-
So you take a bite and you're like, okay, now I got to push this down. Huh?
You don't have to think about it, it just does it.
Something takes over, right? Thank goodness, right? Because, you know, you got sugar, you got protein, I guess. I don't know how much protein are in those. Yeah, those are protein cookies. They're better for you. Fats, I'm sure. But anyway, so, you know, your body needs, you know, so you've got 75 trillion cells. Every cell in your body needs some combination of fat, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals. So your body knows what to do, where to do it, how to break it down, what, you know, add insulin, get the glucose out, break the proteins down, amino acids, all that stuff. And then it knows of all those cells, okay, my left pinky toe needs a little fat in the cell wall, put it in the bloodstream, get it down, you know. So your body controls all that. Everything that we don't constantly think about is controlled through this innate intelligence. Your heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, immune function, reproduction, elimination, all these things that are happening, pupil dilation, you know, when your hair stands up on the back, and all these are things that are happening without you thinking about it, right? That's all controlled by innate intelligence. It's the same intelligence that literally took you from 2 cells and turns you into the incredible being that you are. But in this office, we call it by its rightful name. It's the same intelligence that created the world, that created the universe. And not only is there a God, but God's in you. Okay, so this is where it's, see, and I know because the hair always stands up on the back of my neck when I get to this point. So what we do as upper cervical doctors is not a theory, not a philosophy, not a belief system. It's science. And in order to be science, it has to be provable. Okay, the foundation, everything that we do is based off the fact that there is an innate intelligence or a God in you. So what we have to do is we need to make sure that it's provable in order to be science, right? So that's what we're going to do. So first thing is, I just told you you're made up of approximately 75 trillion cells, right? So there's 75,000 million, billion, trillion, okay? Every single cell in any moment, and a moment's not a measurement of time, right? A moment's like a slice through time. In any moment, every single cell has approximately 200,000 chemical reactions in that cell. Okay, 200,000 chemical reactions happening at any moment in each cell, right? So that's 200,000. So in your body, that would be, right, okay, we're going to say 75 times 2, I know is 150, and then we'll, yeah, then we'll just add zeros, okay? So we know it's 150, we'll say gazillion, whatever. A big number, right? Now that's just in a moment, okay? So let's go with this for a second. How many chemical reactions would there be then in a second? How many moments in a second? 60 moments?
No. Backwards.
I don't know.
I'm back.
I don't know, but I'm going to say there's a lot. Okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to keep going. Okay, so then you multiply that in a minute, right, times 60, and then say in an hour, right? Real quickly, we're getting to a big number, right? You say a big number, right? So an infinite number pretty darn quickly, right? Okay, that by itself, that's pretty cool, right? But let's back up over here to these chemical reactions. Every one of these chemical reactions is happening for a reason. There's a purpose behind them, right? It's organized. It's not random. They happen for a purpose. They must be organized, right? If it's organized, there's got to be some intelligence. I mean, have you ever seen a house accidentally build itself? No. If there's organization, there has to be intelligence. So what we're dealing with then now is an infinite intelligence. So what could possibly be infinitely intelligent? Or what could possibly be all-knowing?
God.
That is what you have to work with. So what are your limitations? Right. What are his limitations? So the only limitation I've seen in 31 years of doing this is the limitation of matter. Okay, if you had an accident 20 years ago and you lost an arm, we can work on you every single day for years. You're not going to grow a new arm. The matter's not there. If the matter's there, then the body can heal itself. I've seen where nerve pathways grow, where I've seen blood pathways develop. I mean, the body can do whatever it needs to do to save itself, right? It just has to be, it just can't be interfered with, which we'll get to. So what we're trying to do is define health, right? All right, so health is, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, health is a 100% expression of innate intelligence or God throughout your body, to every cell in your body. Health is a 100% expression of innate intelligence throughout your body. Okay, if that's the case, then what would be a 0% expression? I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. So you could also say health is a 100% life. Death will be 0% life. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have a 100% expression of God to every cell in your body, that is full health. Okay. Anything less than 100% would be less than healthy. Okay. So what are some things, for example, that could lessen your expression of innate intelligence? Let's say you drink a fifth of whiskey every day. Okay. Or you smoke a couple packs of cigarettes every day. Or let's say you ate McDonald's 3 times a day every day, right? Right? So these are things you know though, right? We need to eat right. We need to keep our body clean. Don't over-toxify. We need to get rest. We need to exercise. Those are things you know about, right? That can affect your overall health, right? So the thing I want to talk to you about now that we know what health is, the number one epidemic on the planet, 95% of people 45 and older, I'm going to mix my colors up a little bit for this one, have something called a subluxation. Matter of fact, medical research shows 70% of naturally vaginally delivered newborns are born with a subluxation. All right, so let's try not to create a Cro-Magnon man. It doesn't matter. It's not what's going to happen. Anyway, I failed out of art school, so I became a chiropractor. So most of us have something that resembles a brain. Seems to be getting a little less common, but from the brain comes a brain stem that comes down through the top 2 bones in the neck. And so this is a cross section of those, and then from there down is spinal cord. Okay, let's say, I'm sure you guys all figured out what that is there. Pancreas. Let's say, okay, you ate the cookie, right? The cookie goes in the stomach sends a message to the brain, says, hey, we've got sugar. Now, I use this example because the primary function of the pancreas is to get sugar out of the digestive system, transport it through the bloodstream to the tissue cell to use for energy. So, the brain says, I've got sugar. I've got exactly this much sugar. So then the brain says, okay, pancreas, wake up. We got this much sugar. We need this much insulin so that everything can get used properly and turn into energy, right? So the brain sends a message down through the brainstem, through the spinal cord, out to the pancreas. The message is the perfect message for what the pancreas needs to do. It arrives at the pancreas, and the pancreas does exactly what it needs to do. Digestion takes over. The cookies get used for energy, and everything works the way it's designed. Right? Perfect. Okay, so let's say this gal, had a car wreck, a sports injury, a fall, had birth trauma, could have been abused, could have been, slipped and banged his head on the wall or whatever. And it pushed one of those bones up over here to the brainstem to the point to where it affected the message to the pancreas. So just to give you an idea, we're not talking about Christopher Reeves type trauma. The amount of pressure that it takes you to feel something touch the back of your hand can cut the flow through a nerve by 50%. So it doesn't have to be anything. And the brainstem, spinal cord have no pain perception. So you don't even have to have neck pain or headaches or anything, but it can still be interfering with the message between the brain and the body. So now the message leaves at 100%, but like stepping on the garden hose, by the time it gets to the pancreas, it's something less than 100%. Could be 99. But you're only going to get the full effect of the message giving to it. Does that make sense? So if your pancreas, no matter how good of a pancreas you have, if it's only getting 90% of the message, you only can produce 90% of what needs to be produced. Does that make sense? So it could be 50%, it could be 20%, it could be zero, okay? But whatever it means, the pancreas now can only produce whatever limitations are given to it by the message there, right? Like by stepping on the garden hose, you can only going to get so much flow out the other end, so that part of the yard or garden or whatever starts to die. Well, same thing happens with the pancreas, okay? So what happens? Well, you start to have symptoms, okay? You go to your medical doctor, he runs blood tests and says, hey, guess what? Yeah, you've got diabetes. And he's like, but, the pancreas is controlled through the nerve system. Maybe somewhere between the brain and the pancreas, something's interfering with the message. We can open up the message. We can get the message back to the pancreas. No. What does he say? Just take these.
Oh.
Right? You don't even need that old pancreas. Just take these. The rest of your life, now you're my patient. And thank you. Appreciate that. And when the drugs quit working, we'll give you shots, and you can just shoot that in your belly 3 times a day, and you eat whatever you want to, right? Even if he knew that this was the problem, why would he tell you? Because then, here, get adjusted, get it fixed, and then you don't need me anymore, and see you later.
Profit.
Right, exactly. There's no profits in wellness care. That's another podcast, actually, about the Rothschilds and how they got into it. But it's a long story. They went into there were medicine, chiropractic and osteopathy were all about level in the 1930s. There's about the same amount of schools, about the same amount of doctors, and the Rothschilds, not the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers had an oil company, right? And they got together with Carnegie, and they had a paper drawn up that basically showed that anything that wasn't medicine was alternative and was basically quackery. Yeah, and they had this published. They paid to have it published in all the newspapers. And then they started putting money into medicine because it's like there's a lot of money to be made in medicine because you keep them sick and they keep buying your drugs and they never get well. So it's a perfect business, right? And then they got to where now they're even smarter. They create the disease and then sell you the cure, right? So it's another story. Okay, now we're going to go on down a little bit. Okay, let's say it's the colon, okay? So there's your colon, and the nerve messages between here started at 100%, but they get interfered with, so the colon doesn't get the full message. So what happens to colon? I don't know. It don't work. Don't work like it's supposed to, right? It could be maybe it moves too slow. You get constipation, right? Maybe you have diarrhea because it's not absorbing enough fluid. Maybe it's not absorbing enough of the nutrients your body's trying to take in. Possibly maybe it stops altogether, like Crohn's disease. The problem with Crohn's disease is they come in and they say, hey, this section here is not working, so let's go ahead and we'll cut that section out and then reconnect the nerve. What do you think's going to happen? Now all of a sudden this section don't work, so they cut it out, reconnect the nerve. It's not the colon, right? They're cutting out perfectly good colon. It's just okay, so if I had a lamp over here, right? It'd have to be a tall lamp since I don't have a table, okay? I just got it from Amazon. Brand new, beautiful lamp, brand new, put a brand new bulb in it, plug it in, everything's working great. All of a sudden the bulb starts to fade a little bit, or maybe it blinks off on, or maybe it cuts out altogether. Well, the lamp's brand new, the bulb's brand new, so there's nothing wrong. So somewhere between that bulb and the power source, even if I have to track it all the way to Duke Power, there's something interfere with the power to the bulb, right? Does it make sense? Okay. Well, if the colon quits working, you have there's perfectly good colon, then somehow maybe the power source somewhere is interfering with the power to the colon. If I took a kidney, and if I had a table here, and I took the kidney out and laid it on the table, what's going to happen to the kidney? Why? Because what?
No blood supply.
Okay, I put it in a bucket of blood.
Oh, it's not connected to your body.
So blood is just food. It takes at least 30 days to starve a part of the body. But as soon as you disconnect it from the nerve, then it's lost all power supply. That's the life travels through the nerve system. So you could literally, they do heart operations and they pull the heart out and lay it on your chest while they work on it, right? But it's still connected. And they will hook the blood flow, through a machine. So it keeps traveling through the body. That just keeps the body, food supply. But the heart is completely stopped. Any organ, they can take it out. And so as long as they keep it connected, then it's still fine. Or you can do a transplant. right? But you got to take somebody else's kidney, you hook it up, you have to hook the nerve up, right? Because it's the nerve is the power supply, right? And that could be anywhere. So the kidney is a good example. Another story. That's a good kidney here. So a few years ago, it was Christmas time, and Gary is a patient of mine named Gary, and he'd been a patient for several years. But he called up here one day. I hadn't seen him in a while, but he called up here one day, and he's like, the girls are like, Dr. Drury, Gary he really needs to talk to you. He sounds kind of upset. He's on the phone. And so I get on the phone. I'm like, what's going on, Gary? And Gary's like, look, Doc, he goes, my mom is in the hospital, and she's dying. And he goes, and I think you're the only person that can help her. Is there any way that you can go to the hospital and check my mom? This isn't something I really do on a regular basis, but I was like, what's going on? And he's like, Doc, she's just really, really sick and she's dying. And so I was like, where is she? And so she was up at Lake Norman, which is right off of 36 on 77. And so I'm like, well, it so happens the next day we were going to Kentucky for Christmas. My family's all in Kentucky, and my wife and I were going to drive up there. So I was like, on the way up, I'll stop in, I'll check her. And then I'll go on to Kentucky. And then on my way back, it'll be a few days later, I'll stop in and check her again. He's like, oh, thanks so much. So we pull in, I left the family in the car, and I have the computer that I check you guys with. I have a handheld version that we do on mission trips and stuff. It's basically got a dial, and it measures heat differentials. So you can roll it up someone's neck, and they can see if there is nerve pressure. So I go into the hospital. When I go into the room, nobody's in there. All the lights are out except for the light right over the bed, and Gary's sitting on the other side of his mom. And so I get in, and Gary comes over, hey, Doctor, gives me a hug. Thanks for coming. Well, it turns out his mom was in a coma. Didn't matter. I mean, it actually probably made it easier. So basically, I did a little postural analysis, felt around a little bit, and felt like her atlas was kicking out to the left. I ran the meter up her neck, a big, strong swing to the right, which means there was definitely a lot of nerve pressure. So we literally rolled her over on her belly, and I just leaned in with my hands, gave her a little adjustment, rolled her back over. I said, okay, Gary, I'm going to go to Kentucky. I'll be back in about 3 days. On the way back, I'll stop, and we'll check your mom. So we left, came back. This time, when I come back into the room, there's like 20 people in the room. All the lights are on. People laughing, talking. Mama's sitting up in the bed, telling stories, talking. So I walk in, and Gary's like, Dr. Drury, come here. And he introduces me to Mom. He's like, Mama, this is Dr. Drury. He's the one who came and adjusted you. Well, so she thanks me, gives me a hug, and we walk over, and I'm like, Mama's doing better. And he's like, man, Doc, you're not going to believe it. He goes, about 3 hours after you left, Mama peed in the bed. And I'm like, well, I mean, she's in a coma. I mean, what's she going to do? Get up and go to the bathroom? And he's like, well, they came in. They had to pick Mom up. They had to change the bed. They had to change Mom, put Mom back in bed. He goes, 3 hours later, she peed the bed again. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, well, I mean, why didn't they have her? And he goes, well, Doc, the third time she peed the bed, the docs came in. And I was like, oh, man. I'm like, you didn't tell them I was here, did you? And he's like, no. He said, Doc, you don't understand. Mama's been on dialysis for 3 years. Mama had never peed. Well, okay, she had peed, but not in 3 years. And so I'm not a kidney doctor. I didn't even know what was wrong with Mama. I had no idea. I didn't even ask any questions because honestly, it doesn't change what I do. So all I did was I checked her and I said, okay, we definitely have pressure here. We leaned in, we adjusted her, and then it does whatever it's going to do, right? I mean, as we say, we move the bone, God does the healing. If we can take the pressure off the bone and allow the nerve system to function the way it's designed to function, then the body works the way it's designed to work. So about 4 or 5 days later, Mama comes in, got some x-rays, got her started. Daddy comes in too, and he got her into care. So the point of the story is that it doesn't really matter what's going on down here. My job I don't treat conditions. I don't even treat neck pain, okay? All I do is just find what's not where it ought to be and try to put it where it ought to be, and then your body works the way it ought to work. Does that make sense? All right. Now, one of the things I've wondered over the 31 years is, that heart disease thing. The first symptom, 50% of the time, is heart attack, right? I'm wondering how many times someone came in because, they got a little neck pain or they got headaches or something like that, and they were like this close, right? Because if that message is going, let's stick with our color code. If that message coming through there going to that heart is interfered with, it works until just to the point where it just don't work anymore. And I wonder how many times, and that's the maintenance, the actual true health care part of this. So what you guys are doing now that are patients, this is the intensive part, right? This is the hard part, right? But once you get to the point to where you just come in every now and then, I had a lady come in today that's 99 years old, that's driving herself and she does everything. Doesn't even let me bring the table up, because she's going to do it on her own. But she's still driving herself today. She's been under care for 13, 14 years. And she's like one of the healthiest people you ever met. You would never look at her and think she's 99 years old, but she can take care of herself. And your body's designed, I mean, hell, even the Bible says 125 years.
That's right.
Right? So now why is that changed? Well, now, yeah, there's more stress in the world, not only in the environment, but even the foods we eat, right? We don't have the same stuff we used to have, but we can still maximize it. So this is the only truest form that I really know of real health care, meaning really truly caring for your health. We can all exercise and we can all eat right and we can all do that part of it, right? And that's important. But at the same time, you got to keep your nervous system functioning because, like with the car, you can always go get another Tundra, right? But you've only got one body, and when that body wears out and expires, it's over, right? You're back to that 0% innate intelligence. Okay, now, this is the part that got me into it. I think I was talking with some of you guys earlier today about this. Both of my parents are chiropractors, okay? And when I was in chiropractic school, I hate to say it, but I got injured by a student, okay? He didn't know what the hell he was doing. But, the young students are dummies for the old students, literally, to practice on. And I'll never forget, I was in clinic, and this guy was older, but he was practicing on me, and he did that little twist your neck thing, and he twisted it once, it didn't do nothing, twisted again, didn't do nothing. Finally, he grunted and went "Rah!" like that, and I heard 3 or 4 things pop, and I got up. I was dizzy for like 3 hours, and from that point on, everything went downhill. And I got really sick. My gums were bleeding all the time, chronic metal taste in my mouth. I wasn't sleeping. I hurt from head to toe. I always had a headache, and I got really dumb, believe it or not. School was really not that hard for me. I never really struggled in school. But all of a sudden, I would study for 3 or 4 hours and walk away and come back and couldn't remember anything. And so I started seeing another doctor, doctors in the school. I started getting checked by people that were actually practicing doctors, and nobody could figure it out. And then I had a guy that I met at a seminar, and basically he said, hey, yeah, I do this upper cervical work. You should come down and check it out. And from my point of view as a student, as a chiropractic student, there's 24 vertebrae. Why not do all of them and do those 2, right? Why just do 2? Why not do them all, right? Can you? And then I started to, once I got desperate enough, I drove an hour and a half down to see him. And he, dude, like I did you guys, he checked me, he x-rayed me, he adjusted me. I laid down, I'm like, okay, whatever. And then he post-came me and the crooked line got straight, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, okay. It didn't really feel a whole lot. But then I started driving home an hour and a half, and as I pulled in the driveway, all of a sudden I got this cold sweat, and I started trying to get to the house. I couldn't. It hit me so fast, I threw up all over the front porch. So I went in the house, rinsed my mouth out, laid down into bed fully dressed, and I hadn't been sleeping more than a couple hours at a time. Laid down, completely dressed, woke up 12 hours later in the exact same position, lights on, fully dressed. So then I get up and I'm thinking, man, this guy, not only did he make me sick, throwing up, but he also, knocked me out. I'm thinking, I was like, this is crazy. I'll never go back to see that guy. Then I go and brush my teeth, no blood for the first time in 6 months. So he called me later. It's like, yeah, I wanted to see how you did, after you got adjusted. And I'm like, man, I don't think I'll be back down there. I was like, I was sick before, but I wasn't sick, And he was like, hey, man, that's freaking awesome, man. I'm like, what? He goes, think about it. You had a virus in your system. We adjusted, your body woke up, and what's the quickest exit, right? Through the front door. And even then I was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then over the next several days, weeks, my whole life changed. And I was like, wow, I remember driving down the street one day and it felt like somebody lifted a veil over my eyes and my vision changed. Like colors became more vivid, just weird stuff like that. It kept happening. And then even my dad, so I had allergies my whole life. If a cat walked across the street, I couldn't, it would be running, my eyes, I could, I'd be itching. I had a mid-back thing that constantly hurt. My dad always had to work on it. And I thought it was, my dad said it must have been a football injury or something, But anyway, bottom line is all of a sudden all these things disappeared. Even my dad, I'd go home, he's like, hey, I need to adjust that mid-back thing. And I'm like, it hasn't bothered me in a while. No, actually, I'm in pretty good shape. So anyway, it changed everything. So that kind of directed me this way. But the brain part of this, okay, I started looking into it. How in the heck can the Atlas axis have anything to do with the brain? Well, any neuroanatomy book will show you that when you have a thought, memory, and emotion, so the brain's an organ, right? The brain isn't the source. Source is God. Brain's an organ because, and I know that because when we go and worked on the cadaver shack, the cadavers, every one of them had a brain, but they're all dead. So the brain isn't the source. Brain's just an organ. It has four primary functions: thought, process, memory, emotions, conscious awareness. But if it all travels, if you have a thought, a memory, and emotion, it travels from one part of the brain to the brainstem to another part of the brain. So it's just like this, but it travels from here to the brainstem to another part of the brain where it's then interpreted. So let's say you have a feeling, emotion. Let's say it's happy. You're feeling happy, right? Okay, it starts at one part of the brain, goes to the brainstem, and it happens off very quickly, right? But it travels to another part of the brainstem where it's interpreted, and then you can express the emotion. Okay? But if there's a bone out of a line here, it interferes with the movement, the transfer of the emotion from one part of the brain to the other part of the brain, then it gets altered before it gets to the other part of the brain. Right? So if it's happy, if it gets stored here, it gets something else, right? By the time it gets there, maybe you're sad, maybe it's anxiousness, maybe it's depression. I don't know, but it changes it, right? By the way, did y'all know 6 out of 7 dwarfs aren't happy? Statistics. Again, I've got all these statistics I can share with you. So it could be learning. It could cause learning dysphasia. It can create anxiety, schizophrenia, any mental disorder. I've had people with bipolarism, anything you can think of. Learning disabilities, adults and kids, ADHD, ADD, stuff like that, all through the brain. So if a bone is misaligned in the neck, it interferes with normal brain function. That's how basically it affected me. And we've got plenty of testimonials of people that have been through all that stuff too. Anxiety right there. And depression, and she was on 14 different drugs. So we get that all the time, right? And it's great. I mean, that's what got me into this. I thought, well, who doesn't want their brain to work better, right? I mean, who cares about a little neck pain and back pain? That's easy stuff, right? But if you can make the brain work better, I mean, there's a lot of value in that, right? So that's how it affects your brain. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Is there anything here, any questions from anybody about any part of the body, how it would affect? Right? One thing I didn't talk about is the musculoskeletal stuff. So let me hit that real quick because this is really easy. Okay. Bottom line is your body is designed to fight off gravity perpendicular and symmetrical. Okay. If one of the bones moves, it takes the head wherever that bone goes. Okay. Well, that brain is designed to be level. There's a reflex called the righting reflex. And the whole purpose of that reflex is to make sure your brain, which is your computer system, is always parallel to the ground. Slip, fall, bump, throws that bone out of position. That's going to take the head with it. To get that head level, it will compensate. It'll drop one shoulder. It'll pull up one hip. It'll make one leg short. Throws your weight distribution off. When things start to twist and bend, then one side has to stretch, another side has to contract. And then it becomes kind of a tug of war. So now you're not fighting off gravity symmetrical or perpendicular. You're fighting it off with bends and twists. It's kind of like if you were to push against something, with a stiff, straight arm, it doesn't take a whole lot of energy. But as soon as you put that bend in there, now it's a whole lot different. It's a different ball game. You're using a whole lot more energy just trying to hold yourself up. Over time, those muscles get fatigued and get tired and get weak. And then the discs, which are start to have little bends and twists and turns, and they start to wedge to the point where they can affect the nerves that come out to all the different parts of the body. So it's very simple. If we can basically get the head back towards level, then the rest of the body that compensates basically take care of themselves and realign itself. Your body's a whole lot smarter than I am, so I don't spend a lot of time working trying to figure out, okay, we need to get this bone here, shift this hip here, pull this leg up here, because your body's smarter than I am. If we can get the head level and get the brain balanced, then the body will realign itself pretty much. What we do, as you've seen, we do some light stuff just to kind of make the lower body, more pliable and allow it to kind of balance itself. And it just kind of helps, I don't know, symptomatically, probably short term. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, last thing I want to get into is retracing. Everybody goes through this to some degree, some faster than others. And I will tell you that the faster you go through it, the more you feel it, but the faster you get to the other side. All right. So when the bone misaligns, okay, here is a cross section, we'll say, of the brainstem. Inside the brainstem, you have this major fiber optics. Remember I told you 75 trillion cells that all have communication to the brain. Okay, all going through that brainstem. Okay, so now typically we have the atlas around it and the brainstem goes through there, but there's no contact, right? And so when we move and turn and twist that brain and brainstem does this, right? It slides up inside in that opening. Well, if the bone gets out of position and does that, that's a problem, but it's not the big problem. The big problem is we do this kind of stuff on a regular basis. So now that brainstem is doing that, right? So if you do this for 5 or 10 minutes, Not going to phase you. Do it for 5 or 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? What's going to happen? So if that bone is up against that brain stem, okay, there's the atlas, okay, and what's going to happen is it's going to start to lay a callus formation. It's hard bone on soft nerve. So to protect the soft nerve, your body automatically starts to put callus layers down on that brainstem. So over time, what's going to happen? Is it going to increase or decrease pressure? Well, you're reducing the space, so it's going to put pressure deeper and deeper into the brainstem. So that over time affects more and more parts. You follow me? So let's say you are one of the 30% that made it through the birth canal unscathed. Okay? Congratulations, you came out, no problems, right? Nothing out of line. But eventually, you're going to learn to walk. You're going to learn to crawl. You're going to roll off the changing table, fall off the swing set, roll down the steps. If you've ever had kids, they've got rubber bones, or else it would be in the emergency room every weekend, right? So something happens, a slip, a fall, right? And then they get a little bit older and they start playing sports. My kids were wakeboarding when they were 3 and 4 years old. They were taking karate. They played basketball when they were 3 and 4 years old. They did that competitively year-round till they were 18, 19. And then, mother-in-law gets this great idea. She's going to buy them a trampoline for Christmas, and all, one thing after another, right? So then they get a little bit older. And so it always starts with a trauma, a slip, a fall, a bump, an accident, a birth trauma. Something moves the bone out of line. Then what makes it worse is stress, physical, chemical, emotional. Physical, more slips, falls, accidents, right? Some of you have people in here with 7, 8 car wrecks, right? I don't know how they're still moving around. And then you have sports injury, stuff like that. But then you have toxins, right? In our food, alcohol, medications, vaccines, all of these toxins add up into the body. Then you have emotional. Believe it or not, emotional stress is way worse than any of the other two. You remember, some of you might remember Sanford and Son. Remember, he's like, I'm coming, eat it, right? It's for real. It's for real. It's that stress. It can kill you. It's true. It is. It's true. But it can. That emotional stress is worse than being in a car wreck sometimes, right? So as you get older, you get exposed to more of that, right? You go to school, you have school stress, you have peer stress, you have other sports activities, right? You get a little bit older and then, you get married. No, I'm just kidding. And then you get a little bit older and you have kids, right? Okay. Well, so then, then you got the work stress and, and then, then you got to pay taxes every year, all that kind of crap, right? So it all keeps adding up to get you to the point to where you are now, right? Well, with that, as this happens, things start to affect your health. So let's say early on, maybe you start to get weakened immune system, right? Kids get ear infections, they get frequent colds, allergies, right? So one of the first responses is a weakened immune system. Okay, then they get a little bit older and maybe they start to have some headaches or, neck and back pain, something like that. Then they get a little bit older, maybe in college you start to have some stomach problems, right? Too much beer and pizza and, you maybe get some reflux or something like that. Then as you get a little bit older, maybe the neck pain runs down into the lower back pain and then maybe affects the nerve down the legs. And then you get some high blood pressure. Of course, that's because, you're 40 now and you're working and right? Okay. Then maybe you start to have some sleep problems, right? And then by the time you come here, you're probably depressed, maybe anxious, whatever, okay? So now what's going to happen, you come in and we're going to find how that bone's misaligned and we're literally going to shift it back. So now all of a sudden it looks more like that, okay? So you did this for 30 years and now all of a sudden it's like that. And you're like, but doc, how come I'm not well? Well, now the callus has to heal. So as that callus heals, then the communication starts to open back up. But it's going to go, instead of this way, the healing now goes this way, which means you're going to start with where you are and we're going to go back this way. So sometime up in here, these things will, now the musculoskeletal stuff actually happen pretty quickly, very cause effect. We balance the body and the muscles relax, okay? But some of this other stuff that's been going on, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get through, okay? So this is called retracing. This is how your body heals. So most people have never been through a healing process, right? You come here, immune system, take some vitamins, I don't know, right? Oh, you have headaches, neck pain, take some Doan's pills, some Tylenol, whatever, right? Then you reflux, take amoxicillin or Prill or one of the other Prills, right? And then, blood pressure, well, we'll just give you Losartan or whatever the heck they are. There's a bunch of them. All right, and you're not sleeping. Hey, now we got Ambien, we got Sonesta, depressed, you can take some Prozac, whatever, right? None of those things are ever going to turn this around, right? They just mask it as you keep going this way. So this is, let me point this out while I can. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but I want you to know there is none of this. You're never here. You're either going this way or you're going that way, meaning your body's healing, you're getting healthier, or your body's dying, you're getting sicker. There is no middle ground. You can't say I'm coasting, because you're not. If the bone is on the brainstem, then your body's getting sicker. No ifs, ands, or buts. If the bone is off the brainstem, your body's in healing mode. No ifs, ands, or buts. There is no middle ground. And I'm not telling you this because I'm, again, part of the whole maintenance thing. Get through the rough part now. That's the hard part. And then once you get there, then we'll just check it every now and then to make sure. And because if we could ever find a way to get rid of all stress in the world, you probably need one adjustment and that'd be it. Right? But that's impossible. I mean, gravity, you can't remove gravity, right? That's a stress, okay? So there is stress. There's stress, right? So you need to maintain it. Once we get you to a point, though, you can check it every now and then to make sure you're constantly healing, right? And we can all be 99 and driving ourselves back and forth and taking care of ourselves if you do it properly, right? So when you retrace, your body's going to go back through things that it may have happened in the past, okay? Maybe somebody hasn't had reflux symptoms since they were in college. But sometimes when your body starts to heal and we start to open up some of these pathways that hadn't been affected, now all of a sudden you might start having some old symptoms as your body heals through it. Wow. It can come and go. It'll come and go. It's not a big deal. And you don't have to get scared. But I want you to be prepared for it, because if it happens, it makes more sense when you understand what you're actually going through. I had a guy one time, I wish I could have got a copy of this. It would have probably made an incredible book. It was a patient of mine. He was 76 years old. And he came in and he was super nice guy. Very quiet, but just super nice guy. Down to earth guy. He came in one day and his name was Billy. And I was like, Billy, how you doing today? And he goes, man, Doc, I feel like somebody punched me right in the nose. I was like, dang, man, I'm sorry to hear that. That doesn't sound good. He goes, no. He goes, it's awesome. He goes, when I was 4 years old, I was playing on a wagon, and I was running off the end, and when I did, I fell off and landed right on the tongue, right face down on my tongue. He said, I've retraced all the way back to 4 years old.
Wow.
And I was kind of giggled. I was like, yeah, that's a good one there, Billy. He's like, no, it's real. It's serious. And I'm like, really? I'm like, how do you know? He goes, I've journaled it. And by this time, he had been a patient, I guarantee you, for a year and a half. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You really journaled it. He said, yeah, I journaled it. So without me even asking, the next time he came in, he brought me a spiral ring notebook that thick that he had journaled, his retracing. And he goes, Doc, I told you, I journaled it. Here it is. And he started on day one, what he experienced. And I'm like, can I look at that? And he goes, yeah, I brought it for you to take a look at. I probably never cried so much in one sitting.
Wow.
This guy, 76 years old, never been married, was abused his entire life. Grew up on a farm where they worked him like a dog, but beat him. I can't even explain it. It was just one of the most sickening things I've ever read. But he went through each beating. He went through accidents. It was mostly, it started with his grandparents, and it was his parents, and then even his siblings. And it was bad. But his whole life changed. I wish I could have got to him 50 years earlier. But he was right. He talked about the experiences he had, and then there's even emotional stuff that can come out. Now, the emotional stuff isn't going to be, you're not going to have a memory, or it's not going to be like a flash of, oh, this happened to me, when I was 20 or I was 2. It'll just be an emotion that'll come up, and it won't be any explanation. Just know that if those emotions come up, like I've had patients, Doc, I don't know, I just feel like I want to cry. I'm like, that's okay. It's probably, and those are emotional scars, and when they heal, they will change you physically, like you can't imagine. Once you get, and it's usually a day or two and it's over. But afterwards, you'll feel like a totally different person. So when you do that, if you do, just know that it's a good thing, even though it's weird. Edmund went through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he said when he was in that car accident, and then he had, I think it was his third adjustment, he woke up
And he looked at me, he said, I feel like I just got hit by a car.
Mm.
And he said it was the same feeling, but then it was gone.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess his body, the nerves were
Mm-hmm.
healing on that night. They're healing everything that happened on that night when he had his heart.
Well, and your husband said he also went through had some emotional stuff one day. Yeah, at least one day I know of.
Yes, he was remembering when he was young and
Yeah.
things weren't well. And,
Yeah.
and he was crying. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just emotion.
Yeah.
But it didn't last long.
No, it
but
won't. And when it's over, you feel like a different person.
I feel
It's
like
a healing.
person. It's
Yeah.
like, he was able to communicate better and everything.
Yeah.
Like,
So this is does this make sense? The whole retracing thing. I don't want to scare you. I just want you to know that if it happens, it's a good thing. You know, and you won't relive every event that's ever happened to you. You won't feel everything you've ever felt before. But there'll be some times you'll be like, what in the heck is going on here? You know, oh, I had this problem. You know, my hip was bothering me when I was playing softball in high school or something like that, or a knee thing, something like that. It's your body. It's a natural part of healing. It's weird because most people never been through it, because most people never really actually they never go back to where they should be. So the goal obviously is to get you back to here, right? Get you back to where your body's functioned the way it was designed to function, and you heal through those things. And then that's when we get all of the calluses gone and all the communications 100%. And, you know, sometimes that can take weeks, months, years. You know, it just depends. Everybody's different. Make sense? But even once we get into the maintenance level, I mean, I have people come to me once a month that are still experiencing healing things that are happening as their body still maintains the adjustment.
okay, so basically what you're saying is if the bone is pressing on any nerve, then if there was an emotional issue, that nerve could not fully express the way it's supposed to. And then when it's adjusted, then the body goes back and retraces, and the proper expression comes out, and that's the healing.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to retrace through it. Okay, the retracing is part of the phenomenon of the brainstem healing, but as soon as we adjust it, the communication opens back up.
And that's for anything that has gone wrong
Yeah.
in the body.
Yeah, and then there's time there. I mean, it still has to take time to heal, but the communication will open back up. And as far as the brain goes, yeah, it just disrupts the communication. So, you know, so B.J. Palmer is the guy who developed this particular work. D.D. Palmer founded chiropractic. And what happened was he actually had a guy by the name of Harvey Lillard that was a janitor that was telling him the story. He was a magnetic healer, but he used magnets and polars, negatives and positives and stuff like that, and I guess he had okay results. But Harvey Lillard was telling him about how he heard a pop in his neck 17 years ago, and afterwards he lost his hearing. And so he said, oh, that's interesting. Let me see what's going on. And he felt his neck and he felt a bump. And he said, well, let's see what happens if we just push on that bump. It was the second bone in his neck, and he pushed on it and it made a popping sound. Nothing happened. So Harvey came back again the next day. He found the bump came back, and he said, well, let's see how long we can keep that bump out of there and see what happens. So he did it. The second day, nothing happened. The third day, it came back and he pushed on it again, and it popped and went back. I guess it went back into place. Well, all of a sudden, he got his hearing back, just like that. And so Dee said, I got the cure for all deaf people. So he had deaf people come to him from all over the world, all over the country anyway. He was in Davenport, Iowa. And you know, not everybody got their hearing back, but some people with kidney disease, kidney disease cleared up. People with other conditions got better. So then he started looking more into it. And what he did was 3 times up and down every part of the spine. Just pop everything that would pop. Well, BJ took it to another level, did research. He was the first person to ever x-ray the skeletal system, x-ray the spine. And he used x-rays and then developed the thermography that we use here. But anyway, he ultimately created Clearview Sanitarium, which was a chiropractic psychiatric hospital in Davenport, Iowa. And the Davenport, Iowa Medical Psychiatric Hospital referred to him all of their failures. He got half of their failures better with no drugs, just by adjusting them, and their psychiatric problems cleared up. Yeah, so it's pretty, the power that it has over the brain, to me, is what really got me into this. But again, it affects everything. It's global.